What's up, Smithville? Kristen Meriwether, your friendly neighborhood publisher. Oh, what a difference a month makes. If you'll recall, last month there was a parade of residents, including children, issuing public comment, asking the city to not make cuts to services. But this month, the pendulum swung the other way, and residents passionately asked the council to not raise taxes, not take on new debt, and not spend $250,000 on an economic development professional. The council respectfully listened to every resident, but when it came time to vote, the council approved raising taxes by 15%, they approved taking on $3 million in new debt, and they approved spending $175 on an economic development professional. But not every vote was unanimous. In this video, we're going to break down the split votes and talk about the impact the tax rate is going to have on your tax bill. We will have a separate video on the economic development decisions and a third video on the newly approved fees and the newly approved on-demand leaf and limb service. But first, a quick note on that parade of residents from last meeting. There were several people who issued public comments against cuts, but the proposed budget wasn't actually cutting those services. So at last night's meeting, Councilmember Mitch Jamison asked the city manager to investigate if city employees had contacted those residents and asked them to speak at the meeting, which would be against the ethics policy. Look for the results of that investigation at the next meeting. Going back to July's budget hearing, if you'll recall, the council realized that no matter what, they were going to need to make cuts. But residents were very clear that they didn't want any of the cuts offered in that first preliminary budget. So at that meeting, the council used a whiteboard to create priorities. They agreed that the COLA raises for city employees and the $250,000 for an economic development professional were the top priorities. The rest of the items on that list were expected to be added back in if there was room or put in the tax note if the item was eligible. But when council got the new preliminary budget for this meeting, only $100,000 for the economic development was included, and all of the items that had initially been cut in the first preliminary budget were put back in. This didn't sit well with council members Mitch Jamison and Brandon Dunham.
At our last meeting, I worked with my colleagues to do the difficult but necessary job of narrowing priorities. We built a simple, clear list so staff could craft a budget aligned with council direction. That was the point: clarity, consensus, and unity. But what was presented tonight does not reflect that. I was told by city staff, council didn't vote, you only gave input and direction. Technically, maybe, but the intent of this council was clear, and when staff disregards that intent, it feels like a slap in the face. Not just to me, but to every council member who worked in good faith, and to every citizen expecting us to speak with one voice.
Councilmember Jamison made a motion to have the city manager revise the budget to match what they asked for at the previous meeting.
So I would like to move that we give the city manager direction to go back, take another look at the budget, take a look at some serious cuts that we can make so that we can reallocate funds to our priorities, and then we can come back on August 29th and do this again.
That motion was seconded by Councilmember Kathy Meek, but during the vote, she did not vote for the motion. That left Councilmember Dunham and Jamison on the losing end of a 3-2 vote. The council went through the yellow sheets, department by department, but over the 2-hour process, they did not cut any items. They ended up keeping $20,000 for the city manager's bonus, and that was kept because the city is contractually obligated to pay for it. They increased money for legal fees by $25,000 because they're using a lot more legal fees. They opted to keep the janitorial services for the rec center for $20,000, and they added back in $8,400 to cover utilities for nonprofits, but they will phase that out over the next 2 years, and I will have that in our part 3 video later today. The only item that was left unclear was money to clean up condemned houses. The budget had $30,000 in there for that, which could potentially clean up 2, maybe 3 homes. But with the council adding in money for economic development, the city manager said he may have to trim that for the final budget. With the budget items set, the council moved on to decide how much of a tax note to take out and what items to put in.
So just for those of you who weren't on council the last time we did this, we spent $2.5 million in 45 minutes. I caution us not to do that this time because a lot of the things that we decided to spend that money on got moved. So let's be real careful about having to spend this money right away. Let's spend it on what we must have and let's save some.
Councilmember Dunham asked about lowering the general fund debt to $1 million instead of $2 million, but that was not an option.
We've already set this ball in motion. If you choose not to take out the tax note, you will owe S&P $17,500 because that's what it costs them to do a bond rating on us. And all of the projects, all of the savings, everything that you've pushed to the tax note goes back to the budget, and it ain't going to work.
With an August 27 deadline to get the budget finalized, that left the council with little choice. Councilmembers Dunham and Jamison voted against approving $3 million for a tax note, but lost the vote again 3-2. The final decision of the evening was deciding the tax rate, but by that point in the evening, the decision had more or less already been made. The tax rate to keep everything in the budget would need to be the voter approval rate, also known as the VAR, for 67 cents per $100 valuation.
The reality is, with the way that the budget, the process we just went through, if you don't support the budget with the VAR, then you don't have a budget, correct?
That is correct. Correct.
There you have it.
Councilmember Dunham asked about the no new revenue rate, which would raise the rate from 58 cents currently to 62 cents per $100 valuation, but the math just didn't add up.
I guess my point is, as council, we're between a rock and a hard place where even if we had chosen no new revenue, which is meant to be a mechanism to ensure that there's fair taxation and the city's earning the same amount of revenue each year and all that kind of stuff.
Get you the same revenue that you had last year is what the no new revenue rate basically does.
And so it just, even still, it's going to be a very significantly high tax rate increase commensurate to what we had last year. And we also get into a position where we're having more expenses to cover.
As the discussion to potentially change the tax rate heated up, Councilmember Jimmy Jenkins disagreed.
We have voted on every article of this budget, and it was pretty much unanimous all the way across it. And now then to be actually talking about, well, I'm not going to vote for it when you've approved everything apart, that just seems a little strange to me.
To which Councilmember Jamison replied,
Going through the exercise of fighting for the things that I felt like needed to be fought for, I had to go through that process in the budget in case the budget got approved. But I will tell you at this point right here, as I will vote no, because I did not see the cuts that I asked for, but I'm one person.
The vote was called, and both council members Dunham and Jamison voted against using the voter-approved tax rate of 67 cents for the budget, but they lost again, 3-2. A point of clarification, the tax rate was not officially voted on last night. They agreed upon the rate to set the budget, which is due on August 27th, and agreed to move forward with the $3 million tax note, but the final vote for the budget will be on September 8th. So what does this mean for you, the taxpayer? The expected tax rate for next year will be 67 cents per $100 valuation. And here's the chart of how that breaks down. The M&O portion of the rate, which goes to operations, will bump up to 43 cents per $100 valuation. And the INS portion, which pays back debt, will remain at 24 cents per $100 valuation. So what does this all mean for you and your tax bill? So I'm going to give you an example. If you own a home for $250,000, you would have paid $1,450 at the current rate of 58 cents. You will pay $1,675 next year for a difference of $225. You will also have a $6.35 fee added to your utility bill, and that's going to help pay off the $1 million of the tax note and the utility fund. But that will be offset by $10 coming off of your bill for leaf and limb pickup, which will now be on demand. We're going to have details about those changes in another video. A 15% tax hike is never fun, and it's okay if you're upset about it. I'm not super happy about it either. But I want to show you one slide before we go. The tax rate in Smithville has been 54 cents per $100 valuation since 2020. To be fair, that was taking it to the voter approval level each time. But last year was the first time it was raised. Imagine if the 7 and 15% had been spread among the last 5 years instead of just the last 2. We can't change our yesterdays, Smithville, only our tomorrows. I wanted to wrap up this video by wishing Edward Belusic a very happy birthday. Edward is the Public Works Director among many other roles at City Hall, and he spent his 50th birthday in a 6.5-hour budget meeting in council chambers. That's quite the dedication, and we appreciate everything you do, Edward. I hope you had as happy a birthday as one could have sitting in a budget hearing. The final budget hearing will be on Wednesday, September 3rd at 5 p.m. in council chambers. And we hope to see you there, Smithville.